AP Environmental Science Video. AP Environmental Science Video.
Good morning, class.
Good morning, Mr. Balsiger.
This is our do the math question that we posed in class. The question was, how many hectares is Bellingham High School? And that was the question. You've been using Google Maps to try to figure out the area, and then this will be a solution, a possible solution that you could go through. So please add notes if you want, or follow along. You can pause, rewind as many times as you want. The very first puzzle for me was trying to figure out how big Bellingham High School was. So our goal here is using clear dimensional analysis. This will make our work a little bit more bulletproof when you can track the units and how they calculate out. So right off the bat, the first thing I did was I went to Google Maps and I found Bellingham High School. And down here on the bottom you can see, maybe you can see if I put it inside of those little green blinking corners, that 200 feet is measured out here. And when I used my ruler earlier, I found that 1 centimeter equaled 100 feet, or this line was 2 centimeters long. So that's my first conversion that I found, was that 1 centimeter on my ruler equaled 100 feet on the screen. Now here is a tricky thing that you'll run into on many of the math questions for the AP Environmental Science, is a lot of students will say, oh, okay, well therefore 1 centimeter squared equals 100 feet squared, and this is actually wrong. Can anybody tell me why? Do you have an answer?
Because 100 feet times 100 feet is 10,000.
Right, thanks, Jordan. So the trick is, I always try to, maybe we can draw this out to explain why that's wrong. As Jordan said, if you took a 1 centimeter by 1 centimeter cube, that is equivalent here of 100 feet by 100 feet. So it's actually 100 times 100 to get how many feet squared the centimeter is. So if we wanted to do that, you could go 100 times 100 long ways and figure out all the zeros, and you'd actually end up with 10,000. The way that I like to do it is I put it into scientific notation. Can anybody tell me what 100 in scientific notation is? Yeah, thanks. 1 times 10 to the second. Thanks, Megan. So I can go 1 times 10 to the second times 1 times 10 to the second. When you're multiplying scientific notation, it's really neat, because what you can do is you can add the exponents together, and you don't have to worry about all these zeros. These zeros are confusing. So what you can do is 1 times 1 is, and then times 10 to the 4th. Because when you're multiplying it, you can actually add the exponents together. So the way that I did this was to translate it to scientific notation. So now I have 1 centimeter squared equals 1 times 10 to the 4th feet squared, or if you wanted to make it out of scientific notation, 1 times 10 to the 4, you could make I always just count 1, 2, 3, 4. You move it over 4 places, that's your new decimal. So or you could just add 4 zeros. You could say 1 with 4 zeros. So that is 10,000 feet squared. So now we have our first conversion. I'll do a math video on scientific notation. It's kind of tricky. So our first conversion is that we know 1 centimeter squared on our map equals 10,000 feet squared. Our book tells us that 43,650 feet squared equals 1 acre. Boy, that is an ugly number, and we'll talk about rounding that in just a moment. And then our book tells us 2.47 acres is equal to 1 hectare, and that's actually, hectare. That's actually something you should memorize. You'll be expected to know 2.5 acres is 1 hectare. So, any questions yet? These are going to be our conversions that we are going to use for solving this with dimensional analysis. I took a ruler I measured Bellingham High School on my ruler was roughly 9 by 8.3 centimeters. So I'm going to figure out how many centimeters square that is by using long multiplication. So when I measured it, I found that when I measured it on the map, Bellingham High School is 9 centimeters by 8.3 centimeters. And so I can get how many centimeters squared by doing length times height. So the way that I do long division, I'm going to start with the ones. I'm going to go 3 times 0 is 0. 3 times 9 is 27. And then when I multiply the tens place, I have to put a placeholder for the 0. So I'm going to figure out how many tens. So 8 times 0 is 0. And 8 times 9 is 72. And I'm going to line it up like this. That's the trick for long multiplication. I'm going to add the zeros together. I'm going to add the 7s together. I'm going to add the 2s together. It's left with a 7. How many decimals did I use? There's 2. So it's 74.7 centimeters squared. If that looked like magic to you and it makes you a little concerned, you can go to math videos on our class website. Long multiply level 3 talks about how to handle decimals when you're multiplying. Okay, so we know that BHS is 74.7 centimeters squared. And now we can use this we can set up our factor labeling. So I'm going to begin my string of factor labeling down here. I'm going to make it a little bit higher. Bellingham High School is 74.7 centimeters squared. Now I'm going to begin my factor labeling or dimensional analysis. I'm going to put that over 1. It helps me keep the place. Now, as I multiply the next value, what unit needs to be in the bottom of the next value for it to cancel out? So I'm going to put my centimeters squared down here. Looking up at my conversions again, 1 centimeter squared equals 10,000 feet squared. Now, we're trying to get to hectares. Our next conversion up here was feet squared to acres. So we found feet squared has to go on the bottom if we want it to cancel out. 43,650 feet squared for 1 acre. And then, so now we've got our centimeters canceled out. We have our feet canceled out. We're in acres. So now we need acre on the bottom. We have 2.47 acres equals 1 hectare. Now, when I finally convinced the College Board to allow you to use a calculator, all you'd have to do on your calculator would be 74.7 times 10,000 times 1 times 1, and then you just go on your calculator and divide by the denominators, divided by 1, divided by 43,650, divided by 2.47, and we'll do that at the end to check our work. But doing it longhand, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply this value up here. I'm going to call that A. I'm going to multiply these two things. So the first thing I'm going to do, I have the values of 74.7 centimeters squared. Actually, I don't really care. I'm just going to handle the numbers here to keep it cleaner. I've got 74.7 times 10,000. I hate that. There's so many placeholders here. So I'm going to change it into scientific notation. 7.47 times 10 to the what? I've just moved it over 1 place, times 10 to the 1. And then 10,000 would be 1.0 times 10 to the what? Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. So it'll be times 10 to the 4. So when we multiply these together, just like before, you can add the exponents together. So that's times 10 to the 5th. And our number, this really simplifies it for me. 1 times 7.47 is what? That's my son's favorite type of math question. Second favorite type. His favorite type is multiplying by 0 because you don't have to remember the first number. The answer is always 0. 7.4. Okay, so this takes care of our first multiplication. The next time we multiply, this would be B. So this is our value for A. This is our example for A. We multiply that by 1. 7.47 times 10 to the 5th, multiplied by 1, that's pretty easy. We multiply by 1 again. Do you see we're multiplying by these values? We've taken 74.7, multiplied by 10,000, multiplied by 1, multiplied by 1. Now we have to divide. We're going to take whatever value we have, divide it by 1, divide it by, oh, here's the actual math we have to do, 43,650. There's no way I am going to do that with long division. Instead, I'm going to round it to 44,000 for my value so that it's easier. And when we divide, I'm going to take our value here. This is, let's see, if this was D, this is going to be our division problem number E. So here is E hashed out for you. So I'm going to take 7.47 times 10 to the 5 and divide by 44,000. I'm going to put that into scientific notation first. 44,000. How many times do I have to move the decimal over? 4 times. So this is going to be 4.4 times 10 to the 4. So now when you're dividing, it's different. When you're multiplying exponents, you add them. Who knows what you do when you divide exponents? You subtract them. So we know our answer is going to be a number times 10 to the 1. So all we need to do is figure out 7.47. We need to divide it by 4. Now this is tricky. Just a quick show of hands. How many of you have done long division in the last year? Yeah, so probably not that many. I'm looking at 10%. So I'm going to set up 4.4 and divide it into 7.47. Now, I would recommend on the International AP exam, you get everything just down to 2 digits. You could do 4.4, 7.5 divided by 4.4, and that'd be good enough. I'm going to do this one. So first off, the question is, we're going to focus on this number here. How many times does 4.4 go into 7.47? I know it won't be 2 times, because 2 times 4.4 is 8, so I'm going to put in a 1. Then I'm going to multiply it out. 1 times 4.4, and then I'm going to subtract it here. So when I subtract this, I get 3.07. You with me so far? Is that okay? So now the decimal just carries up here. Now our question is, how many times does 4.4 go into 3.07? That's our next question. Actually, how many times does 4.4 go into 30.7 is how big the number is. We can kind of start. The decimal is still here, but our numbers, we begin, the decimal is only a placeholder here. So we want to know, this is our value that we need to figure out. How many times does 4.4 go into this value? How do I explain this as 30.7? I'm not sure how to tell you that. But that's what I want to know. I will add a little speech bubble on here when I figure out how to explain that. I'll be like, here's what Mr. Balsiger can't explain. All right, so then I'm going to put in a 7 here and see how that works. 7 times 4.4. I can do that. 7 times 4 is 28. Carry the 2. 7 times 4 is 28. Added to the 2 is 30. 4.4 times 7, if you want to see how I did that in my head. 7 times 4 is 28. 7 times 4 is 28 plus the 2. I carried that over from the 28 is 30. We have 1 decimal here, so we give it 1 decimal here, so it's 30.8. See how that's too big? We know it's slightly less than this 7. 6 would be 26.4, I think, and that's so. I'm just going to leave it as 1.7 as my close estimate. I'm going to say that's close. Are we okay still? Okay, so now what I've done was I've taken care of this. I know my answer right now is 1.7 times 10 to the 1. The answer to this value is going to be 1.7 times 10 to the 1. Now, if I'm following my factor labeling, sorry about the up and down, centimeters are gone, feet are gone, and now I'm in acres. Right now I'm in acres. The only thing I have left to do is divide by 2.47 acres. So I've got 1.71 divided by 2.47 acres. I'm going to round this just to two numbers. I'm going to call this 2.5. I'm going to say, what is 17 divided by 2.5? And I'm going to put that 17 divided by 2.5. Let's see. So I'm going to try to get how many? I know 7 times 2 is 14. So that's going to be a little too big. So I'm going to go 6 times. 6 times 2.5. 6 times 5 is 30. Carry the 3. 6 times 2 is 12. Plus this 3 is 15. So 6 times 5 is 30. Carry the 3. 6 times 2 is 12. So that's... This is not easy. 6 times 5 is 30. Carry the 3. 6 times 12 is 15. This is where the decimal is. So, and I'm left with 20. So 6 point something. So I'm going to try an 8. 6.8. So 8 times 5 is 40. Carry the 4. 8 times 2 is 16. Plus the 4 is, what was that? It was 20. So what we get is 6.8. And our number is left in hectares. So this crazy question comes out to BHS is 6.8 hectares. Here's the abbreviation. So how big is a hectare? I don't know, but Bellingham High School takes up 6.8 of them. I took out that times 10 to the 1 when I made it a 17. It was a 1.7 times 10 to the 1, but that got confusing in my brain. I thought I could just simplify it by taking 17 and dividing by 2. Does that make sense? Yeah, so that is the craziest question of the week. Thanks for tuning in.